Welcome to another episode of Out of Spec Dave. You know, a lot of you have been saying, Dave, what happened to the Your EV Journey videos? And it's just so funny. One guy reached out to me, where's the Your EV Journey video? And then my new friend, Jay Rivard, who you're going to meet here in a moment, he actually reached out to me about 20 minutes later. So I was like, that's it. I gotta pick this guy's brain. Jay reached out to me, though, on an interesting topic. Let me read to you his email. He goes, hey, Dave, I live in New Hampshire and I own a Tesla. He said, if you're looking for a topic for a video, I would love to see one on getting service when your closest service center is far away. Also, if you want to buy a Tesla, either you have to pay a delivery fee or drive to New Jersey. And he lives in New Hampshire. That's a pain. So, you know, he'd be interested to hear my thoughts. So, you know, my thoughts are, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. So let's get into it. Let's meet my new friend, Jay, and talk to him a little about his EV journey. But more importantly, let's find out what the challenges are of buying and getting a serviced Tesla serviced in the state of New Hampshire. So let's get into it. So Jay, welcome to the channel. I appreciate you reaching out, and hopefully others will see that if you do reach out to me, I may just respond. And, you know, the timing of this was just perfect. So, Jay, thank you and welcome to the channel.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Excellent. I know we were chatting briefly before this video, and you were telling me that you drive a Tesla, a 2023 Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive. And you said that Kyle and I may have had something to do with that.
Yeah, I saw your videos on that, and I've been thinking about Tesla for a long time. I've had other EVs, and I've really wanted one, and the opportunity came up, and I saw your reviews. I said, yeah, I got to do it. So
that's great. What was your car journey before? Like, what was your first EV that you ever got?
Well, I started off with a Prius back in 2009, and that was a good car. Didn't love it, but it was good. And then my last car was a Nissan Leaf SL.
Okay.
A really good car. It just didn't have the range that I wanted with it.
Yeah.
Like that. And yeah, I've always wanted a Tesla. I've liked EVs all my life. I remember as a kid in high school, there was a local dealership that used to sell Renaults.
Really?
One of those Renaults was a Lecar that was converted to electric.
How cool. I remember the Lecar.
Yeah.
And by the way, I got a C- in French in high school, so there was no way I was buying a Renault. You know, that just wasn't going to happen.
So, you know, it was converted actually in Massachusetts. They sold a lot of them to the federal government. They called them the electric leopards. And I see them on eBay and Craigslist occasionally.
That's very cool. Please, Kyle, don't watch this episode. You know what's going to happen, Jay? He's going to end up using my Model X to tow it somewhere to pick up a freaking Renault Lecar, whatever. And, you know, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'll never get my Model X back now. I'm just kidding. But so when you saw this thing, what intrigued you about it? Just the technology?
Yeah. Well, this was right at the end of the gas crisis, if you remember.
Yeah.
So I was like, geez, if I had electric, I wouldn't have to even deal with this, you know?
Yeah. Remember otter even days, green, yellow, red flags. Oh, yeah. Man, those were the days.
Yeah, it was something.
It was something. So just to fast forward a little bit, you're currently in the software business. I understand you own your own business, and you're kind of a tech guy in respect.
Yeah, for the past 35 years or so, I've been in the CRM space, customer relationship management space. Right now, for the past almost 20 years, I've been working with Salesforce.com. So we service wealth management firms throughout the country, helping them implement Salesforce and support it.
Right. That's good. I know we use HubSpot where I work, but I've used Salesforce in the past. It's a great product. So, well, good. So, you know, the rear wheel drive, I'm just curious, you mentioned you live in the center of the state which I would imagine gets snow. I mean, it's New Hampshire, right? Live free or die, Granite State, but you get snow. We all know that.
Yeah.
How have you found the rear wheel drive? Now, we haven't had a lot of snow this year. At least down here in Connecticut, we haven't. But how have you found the rear wheel drive in the snow?
Yeah, we haven't had a lot of snow, maybe a foot or so, maybe a little bit more than that since winter came. It's been great in the snow, though. I mean, all the weight is over the rear wheels. It pushes through fine. I live on the side of a mountain, basically, and I have no issues with it. So I've had all-wheel drive cars before. I have a 4x4 Ram truck that I use for plowing or whatever. But
Right.
yeah, it's fine. It's great in the snow. I mean, it's
Yeah.
heavy, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah. It's kind of the 911 effect, and let's also face it. Yeah, the Model S's are super popular and have been in Norway for a long time. And if anybody gets snow, we know they do.
Right.
So, a lot of it's about tires. Do you run just the standard 18-inch with the all seasons where you live?
Yeah.
Okay.
The original tires, I only have 10,000 on the car now. So,
Right.
all
right. Well, good luck with that. They're great cars, and being able to charge those if you need to up to 100% consistently, not worry about it with the LFP battery pack is a great thing. The cold weather we have found does affect the LFP battery packs a little bit more than the ones, let's say the 2170 Panasonic cells. But if you're not doing huge road trips and you precondition and what have you, you'll be fine. Let's talk about buying a Tesla when you live in the state of New Hampshire, because I have heard that, look, Tesla is kind of in this weird spot where, like, for example, in the state of Connecticut, the dealer franchise laws have prevented Tesla from selling cars in the state of Connecticut. And you can get them serviced here, but they are not allowed to sell them. And I don't know if you saw the video I did. I drove up to Mohan Sun. I was so excited when I found out that Tesla opened up a showroom to sell and deliver their cars right in the smack middle of the state. I was like, I got to go see this because I just love that they did that.
Yeah. Tesla always finds a way.
Yeah, they always find a way, right? And what's strange to me was before this call, I was doing a little bit of research around, what states don't allow, because of the dealer franchise laws, they don't want a middleman. Tesla doesn't want, not Tesla. The dealers don't want to allow companies to sell their cars directly to the consumers because it cuts them out. And Tesla's like, hey, listen, you come up with a better business model and you're going to tell me I can't sell a car. But what's weird about New Hampshire is that New Hampshire doesn't say to Tesla, you can't sell a car in our state. Tesla just doesn't sell cars in the state of New Hampshire. And I wanted to kind of ask why you think that's the case.
I think it's population. We're not a big state. I mean, a good portion of the state is undeveloped. I think there's less than 1.5 million people here. So they probably don't see the economic value in it yet, maybe. I'm guessing. There has been talks. I've done some research where they were looking at sites in central Mass, one in Bedford, which is right next to Manchester, in that general vicinity, but they've never pulled the trigger on it. So I'm hoping one day they will, but they'll go where the money is, as any corporation will. And
sure.
Those areas.
That makes sense. And then if you go to the west, you got Vermont, which, I mean, Burlington is really far away. Let's face it. When you're taking, what is it, Route 89, is it? That goes up? 89. And that's a haul. And then if you go to the east, you got Maine, which is a lot more desolate in many respects than even New Hampshire.
Right.
Of course, you got Portland and all that, and then the obvious choice as to where you would go buy a Tesla if you live in New Hampshire is just go to Mass, right? Go to Massachusetts. So why can't you do that if you want to buy a Tesla living in New Hampshire?
So let me tell you the story of how I bought mine. It kind of factors that answer into it. So I decided I wanted it in March, but it was the last Saturday of the month. And the reason I was pulling the trigger then is that $7,500 tax credit was going away at the end of the month. And I said, oh, okay, I'll just buy one in Massachusetts and it'll be fine. And when I talked to the people at Tesla, they said, no, you can't do that. unfortunately, you're going to either have to have it delivered, but we can't deliver it before the end of the month, so I wouldn't get the tax credit, or I'd have to drive down to New Jersey to get it.
Yeah, that makes sense. New Jersey.
Right.
I
So,
mean, what is that?
yeah. That's
And
crazy.
now in New Hampshire, you don't pay sales tax on like groceries or clothing or even cars. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, there's no sales tax on just about everything.
So if you were to buy a car in the state of Massachusetts, but you live in New Hampshire,
Uh,
would you have to pay Massachusetts sales tax, or they're just not going to sell you the car because you're not going to register it in Mass, you're going to register it in New Hampshire, and they don't have reciprocity to be able to do that. Is that what the situation is?
So if I bought a nice car in Massachusetts, it's registered here. I don't have to pay sales tax because sales tax is collected by the Department of Motor Vehicles in Massachusetts. So if I don't register it there, I don't have to pay sales tax.
On an ICE car
Yeah, any car really.
or
Yeah.
any car.
Yeah.
So if you were to buy, so let me get this straight. If you were to buy a Tesla in the state of Massachusetts, can you do that?
They won't let me do it.
They won't let anyone do it, or they won't let you do it because they don't like you.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but it could be.
No, so the point is they won't. So the Tesla will not sell you a car out of Massachusetts if you live in New Hampshire.
Yes, that is what I'm told.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think they would like to, but I don't think they're allowed to. So
They're not allowed to. Okay. So there's some law that does, so you, if you live in New Hampshire, let's say you live up in Errol, New Hampshire, right up by Route 16 on the Androscoggin River, and you want a Tesla, you're going to have to drive all the way to Paramus, New Jersey?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, all right, wait a minute. So
you have it delivered. So
or you can have it delivered.
Right.
Okay. And how much does it cost to have the car delivered?
They told me about $800 to have it delivered, which I probably would have done, but I needed it before the end of the month.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah, because it wasn't like it was getting cut in half. I remember that the end of March, it was just gone.
Right.
And then it came back.
It came back, yeah.
Right. So so that was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
These rules just get insane. So okay, so I believe Tesla used to deliver cars out of Mount Kisco, New York, which at least is, an hour and 10 minutes north of Paramus or an hour north of Paramus. But they stopped that because Mount Kisco has to service all the people in Connecticut. Like, for example, if I buy a car on Tesla.com, I take delivery at Mount Kisco. I can't go to, Long Island to take delivery of a car. At least I don't believe I can. I've never have. And I bought a lot of Teslas, so it's always Mount Kisco for me. Yeah. So they stopped that. So now you have to go to Paramus. What about servicing your car? Can you take your car into a Tesla service center in Massachusetts?
I can. Yeah, I can get it serviced there. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Other than, well, I say it's not a problem. The problem is the closest one is almost 70 miles away.
Right.
So if they have something that needs to be serviced that takes more than a day, so I have to drive 140 miles there with somebody else to drop it off, drive home, and then do the same thing again to pick it up. So we're talking 300 miles to get service done.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds to me as if the problem is the density of the population. It just doesn't make business sense for Tesla to sell or service the cars in the state of New Hampshire. So it sounds like a lot more people either got to start buying cars who live in New Hampshire, or you guys got to increase your population. So, I don't know which is gonna work. But in the meantime, all right, is it worth it for what you've had to go through with your Tesla? Are you happy?
I love the car. I can honestly say I've had a couple of Benzes. I've had a lot of different cars over the years. I think upwards of 20. I'm kind of like you.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the best car I've ever owned.
That's great. Yeah. And it's funny. There are so many good cars on the market today that, I think some of the things when Teslas first came out in 2012, 2013, that really caught my eye and intrigued me, it was just so different, right? It wasn't, it wasn't like there was so much choice out there in terms of vehicles. Today, there's so much choice. It's a tremendous buyer's market. And, but yet Tesla, it seems like people are starting to want to hate Tesla for a lot of different reasons. I just, I don't really care about that stuff. I just love the way they drive. I love the fact that when you pull up the app and you precondition the cabin before you go out to work, it works every time. I love the charging network. They just seem to have gotten the whole cohesive ecosystem correct, that it's hard not to recommend, especially to a first-time EV driver, either, a plug-in hybrid or a Tesla. Now, if you, how much road tripping do you do with your cars?
Not a lot. A couple times a year, I'll go on a trip somewhere, but I don't use public chargers all that often.
Right.
So use case works for me, especially here in New Hampshire. There's not a lot of public chargers. You've been up here. There's probably 4 supercharger stations throughout, maybe 5 throughout the state.
Right.
So, you can't rely on those. But I think the bigger problem here is I'd like to see a lot more level 2 chargers. So I'd like to see businesses, a few of them in Mass actually do this. I haven't seen it in New Hampshire. Like if you go to a restaurant, they'll have free charging there where you plug in, grab something to eat, charges. Usually it's complimentary, whatever. I'd love to see a lot more of that. I think it makes economic sense for the establishments to have these types of things. But there isn't a lot of that here in New Hampshire. I'm surprised like hotels don't have more of that up here, but it's kind of scarce. And there's a few bed and breakfasts I've seen that offer, but they have like one.
Right.
Isn't enough.
I know. And it's interesting. Like if, even when you're traveling up and down the I-95 corridor between Connecticut and Florida, which I do, I don't tend to plan my trips, which drives my daughter crazy if she's on a road trip with me. She's an event planner and a wedding planner. It's just like boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, I don't know, where are we going to stop? I don't know. But, as soon as I start getting tired, then you look on the app and then you look at, okay, hotels.com, and you put in, all right, do you have, EV charging? And then you find a hotel that does, and then you get there and they have one, and then there's a car plugged in. So what are you going to do? Right. Look at charging infrastructure in the country. We could talk for hours, Jay, about that. What do you do to charge your car? Do you have a level 2 EVSE at your house?
I have a level 2 and of course a level 1. And I would say 90+% of the time I just use the 120, the level 1 to charge my car. It's
okay. Fun. And even though you have a level 2, why do you choose to charge it on the level on the just the level 1?
I've convinced myself it's better for the battery. I don't know.
You're overthinking it, my friend. I think that's fine. I mean, it's interesting. I just plugged my wife's Model Y in, and I instead of charging it at 40 amps, I lowered it down to 32 because I'm like, I want to preserve the battery. So what is that charge on a 110? Mm-hmm. What will that do? Is it like, I should know this, but it's like takes a long time to charge it. But if you're not really going all that far, it doesn't really matter, right? So
So I've brought it down to like 2% and charged it to 100, and that was like 26 hours, I think.
Right.
100, which kind of worked for me because I wasn't going anywhere the next day.
You know what I'd like to do is I'd like someone maybe who's watching this video to comment and maybe I should ask Tom Malogny this from State of Charge, because I'm curious about this. If you're trickling energy into the battery, there's a certain amount of energy that gets lost based on just whether it's heat loss or just everything that's coming out of, the AC adapter that's having to be converted to DC so that it gets stored in the battery. I'm wondering if you stretch it out over such a long period of time, 26, 28 hours, versus charging the car on a level 2 and scale it back to, let's say, 24 amps or what have you, that's going to charge it much less time. I'm wondering which is actually more efficient on your energy bill. Like what does that actually do? It'd be interesting to ask Tom that question, unless somebody can chime in with an answer there. So if you are in the state of New Hampshire and you're interested in buying an EV, what other car dealerships that you've been to do you think are doing the job right to educate the consumer about this transition to electrification? I'm just curious what it's like up in New Hampshire.
I think it's typical across the country, to be honest. A lot of car dealerships, they don't really want to sell electric cars, and their sales reps are not very literate on the subject. They'll throw out some buzzwords, but they don't really know what it means. With the exception was the place where I bought my Leaf, because the sales rep that I was dealing with there actually drove a Leaf. He's on his second Leaf. In fact, I bought his old Leaf that came off of lease. So he understood the car and its strengths and limitations. Being CHAdeMO is a big problem.
Yeah.
But he was pretty honest about it. But I've gone to probably 4 or 5 dealers talking about EVs. A lot of them don't even sell them. We're not going to inventory those things. We're not going to bother with them. They're junk. I had one guy say that.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
And they really don't understand the technology and the benefits of it. They'll say, "Yeah, there's no maintenance, but then we don't make any money."
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's usually what I find is there's 1 or 2 guys that are sort of dialed in at the dealership that are just into it, right? Car guys, perhaps, and they'll always say, "Oh, you need to see Bill. He's off on Thursdays, so come back." And that's kind of a shame in a lot of ways. But look, EVs are not for everyone. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the noise from last week with what happened in Chicago with the cold weather affecting EVs. With you living up in New Hampshire, I'm also just curious, what are your thoughts? Do you think how much of this is real, or how much of this is just fear, uncertainty, and doubt from the mainstream media?
I think it's overblown. Yes, there is range loss with it. I think what happened in Chicago, quite honestly, is that there was a lot of people who were doing Ubers with Chevy Bolts, which I don't know what the charge max on that is, like 50 or 60 kilowatts.
55.
Yeah. It's going to take forever, and they're sitting there waiting to go to 100%. Taking up all these chargers, well, that's going to be a problem. But that's not a problem with electric vehicles in general. It just happened to be that situation. But they work fine in Norway. It's not a problem. Other parts of the world. So I think it's overblown. And quite honestly, most people don't drive more than 100 miles in a day. I mean, people think they drive more than they actually do. So I think probably the bigger thing in getting back to the level 2 charges being available, whatever, is if you live in an apartment building and there's no public, no charging there, and you have to rely on public charging, that's tough. I don't know that I would own an electric car if I lived in an apartment.
I mean, listen, my daughter Katie lives in Tampa. She lives in an apartment building with her roommate. They don't have charging there. I was like, don't buy an electric car. I mean, first of all, I don't want her out charging. I know this sounds like I'm just maybe an overprotective dad, but she's tough though. I probably wouldn't want to meet her at 2 a.m. in a Walmart, but it's not easy when you don't have a garage or a place to charge, effectively. And that's why I've been playing around with these, with the Chevy Volt and the Cadillac ELR recently, because I used to, my first EV was also, I don't know if you can call it an EV, but my first EV was a Prius, and just like yours. And I was just fascinated with the graphics, when you see the energy going from the battery to the wheels, and then from the engine to the wheels, and then back to the battery. And I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
And just having that sort of tech mind, that was my gateway drug into the real world. And I think that for a lot of us in the EV space right now that are just advocates of the way they drive and all of that, they say, jump right over, the plug-in hybrids. But you also watch Kyle towing vehicles with EVs in the cold weather, and I mean it's brutal, right? It's horrible. And so you see what Dodge is doing now. They're coming out with this new plug-in hybrid. I think what Chevy had with the Voltec technology, that's one of the reasons I wanted to explore the Volt while Kyle has my X out west. I figured, why rent the car? I mean, I did, but I've been really sort of living this use case of plug-in hybrids. And it's funny, I was talking to Kyle last night on a podcast we did, and I mentioned this, and he's like this, and I said, Kyle, I'm serious. Like, I think there is a place for plug-in hybrids, especially imagine if you can get your range up to in a plug-in hybrid to 80 miles, right?
Yeah,
and then you have a generator that can extend it out, like, whether it's a Volt or an i3 or with the range extender. Yeah. I think that, for the vast majority of people, you'll just drive electric all day long. And then when you go on your road trips, you just put gas in it, right? That makes sense to people. There's no charger anxiety. There's no range anxiety. Yeah. It's definitely not best of breed, but I think it's maybe, you look at, growth curves, oftentimes they're not linear, right? You have a huge early adopter, for EV. And then all of a sudden we get all this craziness with the cold weather and it getting caught up by mainstream media. And right now, buying EVs is a buyer's market, right? What's happened with Tesla lowering the prices over the last year. And then you combine that with all the noise in the marketplace. Why would you want to own an EV if you can't even charge it, and and all that? So it's a great time to buy one right now, in my opinion, and negotiate hard. Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if if we plateau down, and then the manufacturers maybe start rethinking the EV strategy. And I don't know that they're going to come out with more plug-in hybrids, but because you can't pivot like so quickly on a dime, with technology like that. What are your thoughts about plug-in hybrids?
Well, I've thought that the Volt and the ELR was the best way to go, because the problem with the Prius and the rest of the hybrids is that you have a gas engine, and then you have the gas drivetrain going with it, transmission, everything else that goes with it, plus an electric motor on top of it. And the Volt has the best of both worlds, where the drivetrain is all electric. You're just using the motor to charge the battery. And so you have a lot less that goes wrong with that. And I think, Ram's strategy with the Ram Charger coming out is a good one,
right,
especially for those who tow. I think that's the best scenario, in my opinion. And I was surprised that the Volt, and I drove one and I loved it. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Didn't take off more than it did. And I was surprised that GM kind of canceled it, didn't come out with a newer version of it, that type of thing. And the ELR I thought was a great car too, just maybe a little overpriced.
Yeah, crazy overpriced. Yeah. I mean, but I just bought one for about 14 grand, right? And the thing is beautiful. I mean, I love it. I haven't got the call back from the dealership. I just dropped it off yesterday at the Cadillac dealer, of all places, Greenwich, Connecticut. So it's Cadillac and it's Greenwich, Connecticut. I'm like, oh man, this is not going to be good. But there's a few things I want to tweak with that car. But it is really, in a lot of ways, it is a shame they killed that technology. Yeah. And I want to learn more about the Voltec technology, but the idea of having whatever the power source was, whether it's gas, whether it's diesel, whether it's something from Back to the Future, right? The movie, you plug in that, and that's your power source to this unit that then can generate. But what's also interesting, I was reading something about this Voltec technology, which is both in the ELR or the Volt, is that it actually is classified as an EV. And, you know, it's interesting that GM blew through remember the first 200,000 cars that were sold, they got the $7,500 credit. They ran out of credits before Tesla did.
Yeah.
And it was because of the Volt and the classification that it was an EV.
Mm.
Well, what's interesting is I believe, and I see it with both the Volt and the ELR, that there are times when the graphic is showing that the engine is powering the wheels. And it's not just like in the i3, all it is a little 600cc gas engine that is a generator that puts energy into the battery, and that's it. Now you can play with that and code them and put hold on there, but there was something about the Voltec technology that when you're going 70 miles an hour or faster, they had it programmed so it technically was putting power to the wheels through this clutch mechanism, that it was not really a generator powering a battery that was then putting the energy there. So technically it wasn't really an EV.
Wow.
So and meanwhile, it's like the marketing guys took over from the engineering guys, and it's just such a complicated powertrain that I still need to do more research on this. But if anybody's listening to this and they know more about it, I'd love to interview you about it if you're an expert on it. But I think that's true. I think that there are times when most of the time, you got the gas engine generating energy to the battery and then the battery putting it out to the wheels. But there are times when that engine, I should say, puts energy down. Well, Jay, listen, this has been great. You know, I guess if you live in New Hampshire and you want to drive a Tesla, listen, it sounds like for you, Jay, you're not unhappy with the problem that you had to go through, A, to acquire the car, and then B, to service it. They don't really require that much service, right? So, I mean,
I had a flat tire. That's it. Short of that, I haven't had a single issue with it.
Yeah,
it's been fun. I hear a lot about quality and on those lines. I think that's overblown. Maybe when you originally came out with the 3, there was some issues, but
well, you know, it's interesting. I've heard, I was doing a little bit of research before this call again, but I think that there are some people who have been pretty vocal on Tesla Motors, the club, about taking delivery of cars, going down to Princeton, you know, getting the cars, not Princeton, to Paramus, and then, you know, driving them home. And then someone wrote, and I don't know if this is true, but if you miss something on the delivery of the car, you bring it back as long as it has less than 100 miles on it, and you don't bring it up to them when you take delivery, they're like, okay, you're cool, right? But it's more than 100 miles to go from Paramus to New Hampshire.
Right.
So now all of a sudden you get home and you go, wait a minute, I didn't catch that in delivery. It was nighttime, it was raining, or was this, or was that. And I've heard that Tesla has been, and again, you know, what you read on the internet, you got to take it for as a grain of salt. But I guess my only advice to someone who is living in New Hampshire, who does drive down to you know, Paramus to take delivery, really go over that car with a fine-tooth comb and get anything in writing. If they can't fix it on the day that you pick up the car, you know, get it in writing before you sign the paperwork that they will honor that. And if they don't, just then if you see it and they won't honor it, don't take delivery of the car. Go home. Doesn't matter if you got dropped off or you Ubered down, Uber home. So be careful with that, because it's a far trip, and that's good. Well, Jay, let me first of all thank you so much for reaching out. This has been great. You know, I really I've not thought about it. The challenge of living in New Hampshire and having to go to New Jersey, it's just unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
So, but
well, hopefully they'll open up a center here and it'll be a non-issue. But
yeah, well, hopefully they will. And you know, I wonder if you now with Mohan Sun open, I wonder if you could take delivery there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Connecticut, it's federal land.
Yeah.
That's worth a call. I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, make that call if you can.
Sure.
and email me. I'd be curious. I'll tweet out what the answer to that is, or if someone knows. But how cool would that be? Because Uncasville is not that far, right?
No.
I mean, it's a lot closer than Paramus, New Jersey. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But my only caution to you is be careful if you go in and you start playing the slot machines. Don't throw all your money away. So it's a fun place, that Mohegan Sun. I really enjoy it. But all right, well, listen, Jay, thank you very much again for taking time out of your night to film this episode. I've learned a lot. I really appreciate it. I hope all of you who've watched as well. And any last words, Jay?
Go Tesla. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, well, go ELR. That's what I'm saying. Go ELR. So, all right, well, everyone, thanks again for watching another episode of Out of Spec Dave. We'll catch you on the next one. Jay, you have a good evening, and thanks again for reaching out. Have a good one.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.